Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Gatan, sadly, we have another school shooting to report about here this evening, this time in Minneapolis. We'll have those details. Also, we're going to have the latest on the situation between Israel and Hamas and the people in Gaza still struggling to have any type of aid, facing a very dire situation there and extremely dangerous, just trying to get food to feed themselves and their families. We also have a couple diseases that are back up in the news here, including some that we thought we had pretty much eradicated. So we'll have those details. But first, COVID. COVID hasn't gone away. It's just gotten in line with the usual illnesses that plague people from day to day. Now, currently, though there is a new strain that has increased emergency room visits for all age groups this summer. Now, the new strain is called Stratus, and while cases are less severe, they are more contagious.
That's right. Experts say the reason for the spike in cases is due to summer travel. Stratus has the same symptoms as other COVID strains, with one exception. Dr. Eric Asher of Lenox Hill Hospital tells CBS News New York, quote, "The only symptom that is different is hoarseness. Folks are still coming in with a cough, and sore throat, shortness of breath as well. But the main distinction is the fact that they're coming in with a hoarse voice. While doctors still recommend vaccinations, they say having immunity against previous infections will not protect you from this particular strain."
So all the previous vaccinations aren't really helping with this new strain.
That's right.
Well, Maryland has encountered a first of its kind that might make your skin crawl a little bit. Please take a look at this video from NBC News Now to learn more. Take a look.
A dubious first for the United States, with the country's first confirmed case of New World screwworm in Maryland, according to health officials there. This is a flesh-eating parasite that officials say was found earlier this month in somebody who had recently traveled to El Salvador. The good news, they're saying that the risk this spreads is very low. This parasitic worm is usually found in animals. It can be found in pets, for example, but it can be pretty damaging beyond that. It can kill whole herds of cattle, and the USDA estimates a bad outbreak could devastate the beef industry in Texas to the tune of nearly $2 billion. Right? We thought this was eradicated, didn't we? Didn't we think this was pretty much wiped out?
Yeah, you're right, Hallie. It was eradicated. This was done decades ago for a fascinating mechanism. We actually raised billions of sterilized screwworm flies. So we raise the flies, sterilize them with radiation, and then drop them out of planes. You feel like this is a science fiction movie. It was real. Over Mexico and Central America, because the flies can't reproduce, they can't propagate the screwworm fly. So that's basically how we created this barrier zone, which has worked for decades until recently, as it's broken down kind of in that Panama, Colombia region, and then it can spread from there.
Is it not at all bad for humans? Is it a little bad for humans? Can it not spread to humans? Like, how concerned should we be?
Yeah, so the concern, obviously, for humans is there. It's treatable. So it's not just that we need to identify it, but it's also, Hallie, the implication for cattle and for crops and for people, for animals. So it's people, animals, all of our ecosystem that can be exposed to this. So what happens basically is they kind of hatch their eggs and larvae into like an open wound. And this can be in any animal, including a human, but it can be in cattle. And then once the eggs hatch, they then actually eat the flesh. And unfortunately, obviously, that cannot do any good for any sort of cattle ranchers or ranchers and farmers in general. And it results in culling these crops. And if it can happen to a human, whether it's from travel exposure, weakened immune systems, that's exactly how we saw this Maryland case. Okay. It can, Yes, it can spread, but this is again why we're seeing that reproduction of those sterilized flies come back into the forefront, because what we need to do is really kind of stop this from propagating and any reinfestation that could happen. So that's the most important thing that we can do.
It just seems like whatever attempts mankind takes to eradicate certain things, nature kind of still has its way in the end. They thought they got rid of these things, but apparently they're pretty resilient and they're back and stronger than ever.
Right, they're back.
Well, Sudan is experiencing a cholera outbreak that has spread throughout all 18 states of the country. Tens of thousands of people from the very young to the very old are being affected. Let's take a look at this next video to see what's going on and learn the cause.
In the town of Tawila in northern Darfur, a stretcher carried on men's shoulders is about the only available means to transport cholera patients for emergency intervention.
The cholera situation in Sudan is alarming. The outbreak has spread over all 18 states. Currently, there are over 101,000 cases reported and over 2,500 deaths. In North Darfur alone, we have over 7,000 cases and nearly 140 deaths.
The people affected are mostly those displaced by the conflict in El Fasher or those struggling to get by.
We have no medication. Children are sick. Even tents for shelter and mats to sit on aren't available. We're just here waiting for what may happen next.
Medical sources say the infection has spread to 130 villages. Aid groups have set up emergency clinics trying to treat 8,000 additional cases in the wider area.
Situation has evolved quite fast, as those camps are estimated to be populated by 380,000 people. Most of them are fled from El Fasher. So those camps lack pretty much everything. Especially in terms of water and sanitation infrastructure, but also health.
The bacterial disease, which is spread through contaminated water and food, has also spread to the rest of the country, with thousands of cases registered in the southeastern state of Sennar, as well as in White Nile State, and even in the Jebel Oulia province, south of Khartoum.
Access to medical care and medical services is very limited, and this makes it even more devastating for communities caught in both the conflict and now impacted by the cholera situation.
Complicating factors include malnutrition, violence, displacement, and waterborne diseases during the rainy season. The young are among the most vulnerable. UNICEF says more than 640,000 children under 5 in northern Darfur alone are now at risk.
Gatan, cholera is really a hard one, you know, these waterborne illnesses, because everybody needs water.
That's right.
And you get in some of these places affecting so many different states there. So that is really a hard thing for them to deal with. Needing water, needing a clean source of water, but now coming down with the cholera. So, you know, that right there is really, as you heard the woman was reporting, it's really affecting a lot of people in a lot of parts of their country.
That's right, sad.
Well, 2 American companies are issuing voluntary recalls on shrimp due to an issue with the container ships that they were transported in. Now, at the beginning of the week, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol detected radioactive material on some container ships that also contained various brands of frozen shrimp.
The material, which is called cesium-137, it is often found in industrial products or medical devices. Now, no one knows how the containers became contaminated with the radioactive material. While the risk is low that there would be a lot of harmful effects from this incident, the companies themselves are seeing no need to expose people to any level of radiation.
Radioactive shrimp, that's a new one that I don't think I've heard of yet.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, there has also been a Legionnaire's disease outbreak in New York City. Now, hundreds of people in Harlem have become sick, and 6 people have lost their lives to the illness. Legionnaire's is not spread from human to human contact. It's a bacteria that is usually found in standing water and can find a home in the cooling towers of tall buildings, which of course there are many of them in New York City. Now, if the bacteria is in a cooling system, it can travel in the air through the ventilation system, and when it reaches rooms where people are, they can breathe it in and become ill. And one other place you really find it a lot is the hot tubs that is that perfect temperature for breeding the Legionnaire's disease.
Yeah, so here's another one that's kind of waterborne, where you're not necessarily drinking it, but you're ingesting it through air, and something, again, you can't see, but is also very deadly.
Right.
Well, the United States has deployed ships to Venezuela's coast, saying it is to deal with drug cartels. However, Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro is issuing a warning because of the move, as he spoke in Caracas at a military event, saying, quote, "Neither sanctions, nor blockades, nor psychological warfare, nor siege. The foreign forces have not been able, they have not succeeded, nor ever will. There's no way for them to enter Venezuela."
Now, President Maduro continued, he said, quote, "Today, I can say that after 20 continuous days of announcements, threats, and psychological warfare, after 20 days of siege against the Venezuelan nation, today we are stronger," he said, "than yesterday. Today we are better prepared to defend peace, sovereignty, and territorial integrity."
Well, the president's remarks were made as reports of 7 U.S. warships were arriving in the southern Caribbean, along with 1 nuclear-powered submarine. No specifics on the reason behind the military presence, other than the U.S. authority to target criminal groups who operate in that region amidst President Trump's crackdown on drug cartels.
7 U.S. warships, 1 nuclear sub. That is quite a presence there, a show of force there from the United States.
Yeah, and you wonder what they're going to do from the waters towards the cartels.
Right. Well, another school shooting in Minneapolis. Now, this time the shooter fired on students while at a Catholic mass at a Catholic church. So please take a look at this video to learn more.
We begin tonight here with the horror that played out this morning for young school children at a Catholic school in Minneapolis, just as they were saying their morning prayers in church. Authorities say a heavily armed suspect targeting the students, firing from outside right through the stained glass windows, striking children in the pews where they sat. 2 children were shot and killed. Several other children were among those who were shot and then rushed to the hospital. The shooter then taking their own life. Police officers responding to Annunciation Catholic Church, arriving to find a mass casualty event, a line of ambulances right down the street. The shooter reportedly armed with a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol, and officials say the suspect used them all. Frightened parents rushing to the school, looking for their children, emotional scenes playing out after many of the parents were reunited, holding them tight as they walked away, the shock and the fear in the faces of the children. Tonight, the nation mourning the violent attack, President Trump ordering flags to fly at half-staff. This evening, you will hear from a 10-year-old boy in one of those pews describing how his friend jumped on top of him and saved him, but that friend was then shot and rushed to the hospital. ABC's Alex Perez leading us off. He's at the scene in Minneapolis.
Tonight, a community in anguish, families consoling one another after a mass shooter killed 2 children and shot many more as they prayed in church.
127 possible shooting of an active shooter at Annunciation Church, 509 West 54th Street.
It was just before 8:30 this morning, 15 minutes into Catholic Mass, before the start of the second day of school for the young students of the Annunciation School in Minneapolis.
During the Mass, a gunman approached on the outside on the side of the building and began firing a rifle through the church windows towards the children sitting in the pews at the Mass. 2 young children, ages 8 and 10, were killed where they sat in the pews. The coward that shot these victims took his own life in the rear of the church. That coward has been identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman. No prior criminal history.
We lost 2 angels today. There's nothing about today that can fill us with hope.
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry angry and emotional, rejecting offers of the usual thoughts and prayers.
And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance.
Well, you know, even in places where people feel somewhat safe, not just to school, but a place where people go to worship, there's terror looming everywhere. No. Antonio Guterres, United Nations Secretary General, spoke at a UNSC meeting regarding the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. In his speech, he mentioned how hundreds of thousands of civilians will be forced to flee the region, causing families to be bunched together in deeper panic. He talked about Israeli strikes on a hospital that killed innocent people while the world watched. Civilians must be protected, he said, and famines, he said, is no longer a looming possibility, it's a reality. People are dying from hunger. And Jeff, in his speech, he also mentioned that these atrocities that are taking place in that area, bringing about these humanitarian crises, he said, this must stop.
Right. There's a lot of calls for stop. There's a lot of calls for action, but doesn't seem like anyone is successful in taking action to help the people in Gaza.
Like he mentioned, the world is watching.
Right. Well, those Israeli attacks on Gaza have killed at least 5 more people, including 2 who were just looking for food. Now, reports have come in that Israel has repeatedly attacked food distribution sites in central Gaza, sending injured people to local hospitals. Israeli forces are targeting densely populated areas, forcing families to continually move south. Now, Israel is currently and publicly expanding its military interest.
That's right. That military expansion by Israel is moving from the occupied West Bank in Gaza to Lebanon and Syria. Well, this is part of a vast campaign to expand Israel. Now, these attacks are mostly hitting settlers and civilians, like we mentioned earlier, but the continued bombardment from Israel in the region is weakening efforts for any type of unification of the Palestinian state.
Well, this next interview, courtesy of TV7, speaks to a former IAF Brigadier General regarding Israel's responses to Hamas's hostility towards Israel and the ongoing conflict. Take a look at this interview.
And we do hear in Iran that they're becoming more and more hostile, rhetorically speaking, towards Israel, claiming also that they have new types of ballistic munitions. What can you tell us about that?
First of all, you're right. We do see that there is, at least from a rhetorical point of view, we hear more and more. And I think that, what is happening now, I'm very, I would say, optimistic from one hand, and then from the other hand, I think that we should also prepare ourselves to all kinds of other options. I'm optimistic with what is happening. I'm optimistic that the European countries, although with all the challenges that we have with them, at least on this issue of the Iranians, they are quite consistent. And I'm looking forward, because I believe it would come the day that the Trump administration would say to the Iranians, okay, guys, I mean, this is a decision time, and let's make a decision. And if we won't make a decision, there would be consequences to it. So the Iranians could say what they want. I think that they are doing it mainly because of what is happening inside, and they want to show their own people that they are still strong. This is what they did, this quite big exercise a week or 2 ago. But when you look at deep, I think that the situation is becoming more and more challenging. And I want to believe with the continuously pressure by the international community, by the United States, they would get to this point that they would have to make decisions with regard to their nuclear plan. And as I said before, there is always the other option, which is open, and we already show that we are willing to execute it.
As the ancient Roman wisdom goes, si vis pacem para bellum, Latin for when you want peace, prepare for war. As the ancient Roman wisdom goes, si vis pacem para bellum, Latin for when you want peace, prepare for war.
Well, different place, same mentality, you know, this tit for tat, retaliation upon retaliation, you know, it's not bringing anyone closer to peace. And Israel, of course, has not made any efforts to try to strike a peace deal and hold on to it with its neighbors.
Right. It sounds like Israel is following exactly, as he mentioned, the ancient Roman law. If you want to prepare, or if you want peace, prepare for war. And that's exactly what they've done.
That's right. Well, the war in Ukraine has been on President Trump's agenda since his days of campaigning, promising an end to the war between the two countries, that is, Russia and Ukraine. But so far, no success. Well, this next video shows Russia and their latest ballistic missile attack on Ukraine not very long after their meeting, President Putin's meeting, with President Donald Trump. Take a look.
It's been 13 days since President Trump said he could strike a peace deal in Ukraine following his meeting with Russia's leader, Vladimir Putin. But Russia shows no signs of backing down, launching an aerial assault on the capital city of Kyiv. CBS's foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tyab reports from London on the deadly airstrike.
Air raid sirens pierce the night sky over Kyiv, and then impact. By daylight, the devastation was clear to see. Russia's coordinated drone, cruise, and ballistic missile attacks targeted dozens of locations across all 10 of the city's districts. At least 20 people were killed, including 4 children. Dozens more were wounded. I felt an explosion, says 19-year-old Vladislav Kalishnikov. It all happened so quickly. The windows were shattered and the apartment filled with dust and smoke. There was glass everywhere. This is Moscow's first major attack on the Ukrainian capital since President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin met earlier this month in Alaska to discuss ending the 3-year war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called for more, quote, tough sanctions against Russia, saying it should feel accountable for every strike. The mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko, told reporters Putin is responsible for this war, which he started and does not want to stop. He is destroying cities and killing our people. Western leaders have accused President Putin of dragging his feet in peace efforts as Kremlin-backed fighters move deeper into Ukraine. The Ukrainian military has also increased its attacks deeper into Russian territory. These overnight drone strikes on oil refineries in the country's south triggered huge fires. And in a statement, the Kremlin denied attacking civilian infrastructure, while the U.S. Special Envoy on Ukraine said the continued violence undermined President Trump's peace efforts which look increasingly in doubt as the war grinds on.
Katana, as you mentioned, that wasn't too long after President Putin and President Trump met to talk about Ukraine and Russia and the situation with the conflict there. But Russia was fairly successful with those attacks on Ukraine, you know, killing quite a few people there, inflicting quite a bit of damage. So that's going to put a little bit of strain on those the talks that President Trump had. He was very hopeful. Right. Remember when after he met with President Putin, he was very hopeful that they could reach a deal and that this war could somehow come to an end.
Right. And in the meantime, you know, Zelensky is calling for more sanctions to be placed on Russia. Well, we've already seen previously what sanctions do to Russia. It hasn't really slowed them down, slowed their economy down or anything. So really there needs to be a peaceful solution on the international community that doesn't involve a military strategy. Right. Well, if you'd like to learn more about how you can bring about a peaceful solution with yourself and your family and community, contact the House of Yahweh. And when you contact the House of Yahweh, don't forget to request your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and the monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites. You can go to yahweh.com, yisraelhawkins.com, or yahwehsbranch.com. If you would like to visit our website, you can do so by going to YPNnews.com. For any emails, if you'd like to email the House of Yahweh, you can email info@yahweh.com. For any international calls, please call the number that's on your screen. And once again, if you haven't already done so, we encourage you to go try out 2 absolutely free Bible study tools on the market. The Yisrael Says by going to YisraelSays.com, or the Ask Yisrael program by going to AskYisrael.com.
All right, well, don't go anywhere, because up next is another classic sermon by Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.